I remember the first dad I represented. He came to my office and he was really sad and he said, "She won't let me see my children." And I asked him, "Who is she and why won't she? And what was it that you did?" And he responded, "I didn't do anything." And he told me what happened. I agreed to take his case, and after I continued to investigate his case, I realized he was right. That mom was using the children as a bargaining chip because of some personal vendetta. And while I understand the reason why she did it, it was so unfair to the children and it was unfair to dad. Welcome to the Father's Advocate podcast, and for those watching on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and Happy New Year. I am so excited to be here because today is our very first episode, and it's a long time coming and it's overdue. And I'm equally excited that you are here. Now, in the infamous words of Erica Badu, I am an artist and I'm sensitive about my, you know, the rest. But before we get started, and because I am a lawyer, check out our disclaimer. The information provided here shall not be construed as legal advice, nor does any communication with our host or guest shall be construed as an attorney-client relationship. Similarly, any information provided is not protected by attorney-client confidentiality. If you're in need of legal representation, you should contact an attorney in your area. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Me. Who am I, and how can a woman talk to you about being a father? The short answer is not a doggone thing. I can't teach a man how to be a father, but what I can do is talk to you about your legal rights, what they are, how to enforce them, and how to bring you closer to your children. I can also bring you actual knowledge and experience from an attorney, that's me, that practice in father's rights law, testimonies from former clients who've been reunited with their children, discussions with dads about why fatherhood is so important, and the underlying reason for parental conflict, as well as some resources that will help you in your legal fight. But briefly, a little bit about me and why I decided to do this podcast. First off, I'm an attorney in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a general practice law firm, but I practice family law for about 15 years or so. And of my entire family law practice, the representation of men and fathers account for about 90% of my entire caseload. Some of the cases that I handle include divorces, custody, minor election, child support, modification, contempt, visitation, domesticating and enforcing foreign custody and child support orders, abandonment hearings, child protective services cases like CPS and DFACS, and legitimation. I've handled cases where a client's former attorney was unable to obtain desirable outcomes for dads, although I was able to, and I suspect that's because of preconceived biases. I've handled cases where the guardian ad litem have recommended custody be awarded to mom, but the court sided with me and awarded dad custody and required mom to pay child support. I've even had a case where the husband learned during the divorce proceeding for the first time that he was not the biological father of what he thought were his children, and the court awarded custody to him anyway and required mom to pay child support. Additionally, through my law firm, I've hosted a father rights seminar, appeared on local radio stations discussing fathers' rights, and I've been a guest speaker at several father rights community groups. So, although I am not a father and I am not a man, I do think I have some expertise and qualifications to help dads who find themselves in the legal system trying to secure rights to their children. Now, I started this podcast for several reasons. The first and most important, at least in my experience, is that there are not a lot of resources for dads, and as a result, dads are often left in the wind to fend for themselves in a system that often rule in favor of mom. For me, I've only had the benefit of representing those that know they need a lawyer, they know how to locate one, and they have the resources to retain an attorney. But there are many dads that don't know they need a lawyer or even how to find one, and then they may not even have the resources to even hire one until the conclusion of the case. So by creating this podcast, it gives me an opportunity to help dads that will otherwise not have access to an attorney. And then in addition to that, many of my clients and family members believe that it was something that was necessary and they've asked me to do this. So here I am. Now, when I first thought about doing this podcast, it was suggested that I say something personal about myself, as a way to connect. So here we go. First thing, There is absolutely nothing in my background that would have led me to practice father's rights law. For starters, when I was in college, I became a parent, an unwed single parent. I don't necessarily believe in single parenthood because I think both parents are necessary to raise children. But if a parent finds himself having to parent alone, then you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Now, as a caveat, there is a difference between single parenting and co parenting. As a single parent, that's when one parent is doing all or nearly all of the duties of both parents. That would include changing diapers, taking the child to daycare or school, helping out with homework, taking the child to after school or extracurricular activities, doctor's appointments, school shopping, preparing meals, attending PTA meetings, taking the child on trips and birthday parties and sleepovers, the entire gamut. You get what I'm saying, right? Co parenting, on the other hand, occurs when both parents share in the responsibilities. And co parenting looks different for every family. Some examples would be when one parent do all those family or parental duties and responsibilities during the week, and then the other parent take on those responsibilities during the weekend, or every other weekend, or every other week. It just depends on what's benefit for the family and for the child. Now, in my situation, I was a college student and I did all of the parenting. But I also had a lot of help from my amazing family, especially my mom and my younger sister. In undergraduate and in law school, my family and my daughter's godmother would keep my daughter whenever I needed to study. They would even do her hair, go school clothes shopping. They would take her to school. They would pick her up from school. Wherever I needed help, they would pitch in. Dad, on the other hand, was a no show for most of her life. Now, in all fairness to him, he would come around for birthday parties, but not that often, and he would come by on occasions, and my daughter does know who he is. However, I don't recall him ever taking her to school or picking her up from school, going to PTA meetings, or father daughter dances. In a nutshell, in my opinion, having a child in college was just not a priority for him, both in terms of his time as well as financially. So as a result, I found myself in court like a lot of parents asking the court to order child support. And I'll tell you, without child support, raising my daughter, especially while I was in college, would have been very, very difficult, more so than what it actually was. And that's because I couldn't afford daycare and food and rent. Even transportation to get her back and forth to daycare was very expensive, and I could not have done it on my own. Now, I know a lot of dads and some moms have very strong opinions about child support and its purpose. And some even believe that child support is a form of abuse to punish dads. But I believe in child support, and I believe both parents should be responsible for the financial costs associated with rearing children. Now, in my personal case, unlike the cases I handle on a daily basis, there were no motions for visitation or custody filed by dad. But interestingly enough, I filed a motion ordering him to visit with his daughter because I thought his presence was important. Now, at the time, I was not in law school and I had not gone to law school, so I didn't know that wasn't a thing. But despite having filed the motion, it didn't make him visit any more than he had did before. So as you see, I have had absolutely no reason to do this type of law. In fact, when I started practicing family law, I really thought I'd be representing moms who had similar situations as me. But after representing my first dad, I realized that every situation was not like mine, and that there are some great dads that really want to have a relationship with their children, but they were just getting a raw end of the deal. And quite frankly, it's not fair. And as a lawyer, I believe in fighting for justice, irrespective of gender. But with fathers, however, I found it almost like an epidemic because dads are consistently being discriminated against in courts, which I believe is because dads don't know their rights, they don't know how to exercise their rights, and more importantly, they're unfamiliar with the legal arena. And oftentimes, dads are in court trying to represent themselves, which I don't think is a good idea. Now, another personal tidbit about who I am. I grew up in a predominantly single family home where my mother was the only parent. My parents were married and divorced when I was about 13 or so, but I maintained a relationship with my dad. Sounds typical, right? But my story is a bit more interesting and a bit more complicated. So, when I was about 2 years old, my mom remarried to my dad. So, my dad is not my biological father. but he's the only dad and father I've ever known. My only memory of my biological father was when I was about 2 years old. And I remember he came to our home and he was banging and screaming on the door and hollering. And I remember my dad went outside to handle it. And that's the last that I remember of that. Now, fast forward 21, 22 years later, I get a call from a guy who says he's my older brother. And of course, I like have no idea who this is, right? He asked my younger brother and I to come to Atlanta and visit him. And in that same conversation, for the first time, I was able to speak to my biological father. And I remember he said to me, I've been looking for y'all, I'm at a loss for words, and I don't know what to say. So my younger brother and I, we went to Atlanta to visit our older brother. We did not meet our biological father, only his son. A few weeks later, he came to our home unannounced and began to tell me how great dad is. And then he showed me some pictures of him and he asked me to point him out. And I remember pointing out two people, and neither one of those persons was dad. And that's because I didn't know who he was. I had no idea who this guy was. Now, that was the last time I spoke to either of them. Now, fast forward another 20 plus years or so after I finished college, law school, had a child, relocated, opened up a law firm, and my younger brother had passed away, I began to get strange calls out of nowhere. And they were coming from my biological side of the family, not from him. And these calls were concerning his health, and there was this implication that I should help. So, just as strange and sudden as this story sounds, is exactly what happened. It started with a phone call out of nowhere and it ended shortly. And then 20 years or so later, I get a bunch of other sudden phone calls, and nothing happened. The commonality is that it's always someone calling on behalf of my biological father, and he has never called. Now, you may ask, why is this important and why haven't I reached out to him? Before I answer these questions, I want to talk to you about potential clients. As a lawyer, I've had tons of dads that are potential clients. Potential clients are those dads that really are interested in establishing a relationship with their children. So they come into my office and they ask questions, but there's no follow up. They don't do anything else. They are generally on the fence, and quite bluntly, they just make excuses as to why they've chosen to forego a relationship with their children. And some of these excuses are they don't have any money, and presumably it's because they don't have the ability to pay child support or they can't hire an attorney. Or maybe they don't want to pay child support, or there might be a denial of paternity, or they're too busy, or they're doing it at a more convenient time, or they don't want to deal with the mother because there might be a lot of drama that comes from that, and a whole host of other excuses. And as a result, a lot of these dads decide, I'm going to just establish a relationship with my child when they get 18. And while these issues can be obstacles, like I totally get it, I understand. In my opinion, as a mother, as an adult child having gone through this personally, and as a family law attorney, these excuses just ain't good enough. Now, I know that's very harsh for me to say, especially coming from a woman. I get it. But, honey, sometimes the truth hurts. And sometimes the truth hurts like hell. And like one of my beloved clients once said, money don't raise children, parents do. Now, the explanation for failing to show a child your love and that they are worth your time is simply on you and no one else. Now, I don't want to preach to you, but the reality of it is that children need their parents. And while it may be a difficult journey for some just to establish your fundamental rights, your children will see your efforts. They really will. Because at the end of the day, children only know what they see. They are oftentimes not privy to the behind the scene conflicts that led to the destruction of the father child relationship. And trust me, the hell that you go through to get on the other side is so much worth it. Now, to answer the question, if you're thinking about waiting until your child gets 18 to establish a relationship with him or her, it is my opinion that this is a big, big mistake. Because while you now may be ready to have a relationship with your child, that child may not. For all intents and purposes, a parent's failure to be involved with their child is tantamount to abandonment. And from a child perspective, it can be perceived as rejection, or the child may have a one sided negative view or opinion of you. Or it might be as simply they regard you as having little to no value. Phew. That was a lot, right? I know. But that's the sad reality. But it really doesn't have to be if you know what your rights are and you know how to fight them. And more importantly, you're willing to fight until you are reunited with your children. Now, why did I choose to practice father's rights law? Well, the truth is, I didn't. It chose me. Actually, I think it was God inspired because on my own, I don't think I would have chosen this type of law. And it all started with one client who came to my office and he was nearly in tears. And let me just tell you, to see a grown man nearly in tears broke my heart. And honey, I praise God for that encounter because not only did it open my eyes to the difficulties that dad faced in court, but it also has allowed me to help so many fathers and reunite children with their parents. It is a wonderful feeling, and it is by God's grace that I have had the benefit and the privilege to be part of these dads' journey. And the thing is, you'll get a chance to hear from my clients. They will tell you about their unfiltered stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, the struggles and challenges that they went through just to get on the other side of freedom to be with their children. You'll also hear from leaders in the father's rights community on the importance of fatherhood. I'll also bring mental health professionals in who will discuss the reason for the destruction of the family nucleus and the effects of fatherless children. Then we'll also have discussion about fathers' rights social commentary like financial abortion. Yeah, that's a hot topic. And choosing better partners, even more hot topic. We'll also have adult children who will talk to you about the effects of growing up without a father, as well as discussion with mothers who support fathers' rights. And dad, just a heads up, there are a lot of us out here that support you, believe it or not. We also have opportunity for you to interact with our guests and ask questions, as well as legal tidbits to take with you. Well, this brings us to the end of our first episode, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that it has encouraged and inspired you. And if nothing else, please know that you are not in this alone. Don't stop fighting. Your children do need you. Please join us next Sunday at 7 p.m., wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, where we will be discussing what to know if you must go to court alone. Until then, this is your Father's Rights Advocate.